Hello everybody. I'm just recording this video as a sort of a service and a bit of support for Techwebcast. Now, for those that know Techwebcast, I'm a co-host. I've been a co-host probably about 6 months now. But Techwebcast has been around a lot longer than 6 months. And I think, well, we've just, in the last hour or so, and that's why my voice might be a bit croaky at the moment, we've just recorded episode 375. And I've just ducked off, had a bite of late lunch, and I'm back here doing this video. So, what is the content of this video and what am I going to be talking about? Well, podcasting is different than audio podcasting in particular, is different than slotting videos on YouTube. YouTube is great because I can do this video, record it, upload it. It costs me a little bit of my bandwidth in uploading it for my data allowance, but that's negligible. And once it's uploaded, it's free. YouTube do not charge me a hosting fee or anything else. And my video, if it's popular enough, can be shared out and liked. And if it's really popular, I could even make some money out of it, but it has to be really popular, believe me. But there's no equivalent for audio podcasting. So what am I getting at? Now, for those that may listen to podcasts but have never really thought about how it gets to their mobile device or their computer or anything else, this is just a brief description. Now, a podcast is really just an audio file. The magic happens when you upload it to a web hosting service provider and then it's syndicated out via a feed, like an RSS style feed. It's syndicated out to iTunes and to other services, or to apps. And so, all of a sudden after it's uploaded, your app beeps and says episode 375 of the Techwebcast is now ready for you to listen to. So for a lot of people, that's as far as they go when they think about podcasting. They listen to their favourite podcast and think that's great. But that magic comes at a cost. And at the moment for, say, Techwebcast, Brad, who is the owner of Techwebcast, has to find around $100 a month at least to have web hosting for Techwebcast. And of course, you multiply that by 12 and it's quite a bit of money even in today's terms. For Techwebcast. Now, Brad loves doing it. He loves podcasting. You can hear when he talks about podcasting, he has a passion for podcasting. And he's, over a number of years has put his hand in his pocket and has been paying for Techwebcast. And I think he'll continue to do that if he can. But what we'd like to do is to have a situation at least where Brad doesn't have to put his hand in his pocket. In other words, the podcast pays for itself. We're not asking, to make the co-hosts multi-millionaires, although if you have got a few million to spare, that would be fantastic. But we're really hoping to make the podcast sort of cost neutral. So how are we going to do that? Well, and if you're listening now saying, uh-oh, here comes the big, please give us money. Firstly, Techwebcast will always be free. The podcast will always go out the way it has gone out, free of charge to listen to. So we're not going to suddenly put a podcast paywall up and say, you must pay money to listen to Techwebcast. No, that's not going to happen. But how can you help Techwebcast? Well, excuse me for the frog in the throat. What you can do, now, if you're listening to this and or watching this and you're going, but hey, Daryl, I don't have any money. My budget is totally stretched. I'd like to help, but I can't. That's fully understandable. Believe me, I know what it's like to be fully stretched. So what can you do to help? Well, when the podcasts arrive and you listen to it, what you can do is share it out amongst your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, wherever. That is a huge help because it builds up the numbers and it doesn't cost Techwebcast in advertising. So if you haven't got any sort of resources at hand share it. And believe me, you will be doing the podcast a great service. So that's first off the bat. So that if you're listening today and saying, I'd love to help, but I can't do anything financially because I just don't have the resources, then share it out. If, however, you do have, a few dollars spare and you want to help the Tech Webcast podcast, and in particular help Brad to make it a neutral podcast, in other words, it's not costing him a monthly fee to run it, then there are a number of options that we're looking at. And at the end of this podcast, you'll be able to see below where I've given you Brad's contact details, because it is Brad's podcast. What some of the ideas we're thinking of is, for example, well, firstly, there's just the make a one-off donation, a tip jar type thing. If you want to put $5, $2, $10 in as a one-off sort of, here's a bit of loose change for the podcast, that's great. Would you like, for example, to sponsor an episode? So we'll next Saturday we'll have episode 376. Would you like to be the sponsor of episode 376 of Tech Webcast? Also, some podcasters like Tom Merritt, they use Patreon. Now, we haven't, set up a Patreon account. Would that be something that, as a subscriber, you would be interested in? For those that don't know what Patreon is, it is a system in which you can pledge $1, $2, $3, $4 a month, and that goes to the podcaster. And our first, and you have you set goals. And our first goal on Patreon would be to make it cover the web hosting charges for Tech Webcast. Would that be something that you would be interested in doing? So really, I'm actually asking questions of the subscribers, you out there, saying, how do you think you would like to help us if you can? And as I say, remember, Tech Webcast will always be a free podcast. So we're not going to put it behind paywalls or anything. But Brad really does spend a lot of time. He gets a lot of great guests on the show. As I said, I don't know how he does it, but he does. I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but on the 7th of May, we will have Andy Anarco coming on. Now, Andy is, works for newspapers in Boston, and he's also a member of the Twitter Network's MacBreak Weekly, and a very, very popular writer, photographer, podcaster in his own right. And yet he's coming on the Tech Webcast, and Brad's managed to secure him on Tech Webcast. So Brad goes out and does a lot of legwork getting people on the Tech Webcast, some great guests. So that's what I'm saying. I will put all the details in the bottom of this video, so in this, in the notes area of the YouTube video. But if you can, if you've got any other ideas of how you'd like to support Tech Webcast, then please contact Brad. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, contact Brad, and he can have a chat to you about how you can do that. But really, it means that Tech Webcast doesn't cost anybody anything, because none of us as co-hosts get paid, nor do we want to get paid. We do it for the enjoyment of podcasting, talking tech, and all that sort of stuff. What we really want to do is make the podcast so that it's not a burden on Brad, and he can live his life without having to worry about finding $100 a month to service the podcast. And I know that those of you who are supporters of Tech Webcast are probably nodding your head saying, well, yeah, I understand that. It's a great show, and we don't want someone, out of pocket regularly in doing it. So if you can help, please do, and we would welcome any help, and we would welcome any suggestions. So you can also jump online at facebook.com/techwebcast and make a comment and make a post there if you want to, like our Facebook page, and make some comments there as well. But I will put the further details below here where you can get in contact with Brad. And we hope that we can continue to make Tech Webcast one of the best Australian-made technology podcasts out there. So thanks for watching.